Can we admit all then?
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, okay.
Ian can do that.
So there's a little tick box that you have to do, Diane. That's the tick thing. It says enable waiting room. So I presume I untick that.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, okay.
Just ping us that link when you get a second, Dan.
I'll give it a few minutes, but after a bit I'll close it because it gets distracting otherwise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can we see how many people are actually waiting in the waiting room already?
152.
So I think that we may very well fit everybody in then this morning.
Yeah, but they might come in later, so I think
That's the link in the chat, Ian. I'm just going to edit the web page.
links in the chat, yeah? Okay. That's to YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put that if I can in the yeah. Yeah, okay. Oh, Luke, I like your little companion.
Oh, this is one of 4. Yeah, so we ended up having one about 6 or 7 years ago, and my sister's got a male when I was on holiday, so she had her, and I come back and it turns out Lulu was pregnant. So we ended up keeping 3 of the pups because I just couldn't bear to let them go. So now we have 4 of the bloody things.
Well, look very cute.
Yeah, in small doses.
Dachshunds.
Yeah, little miniatures. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, to be fair, they only take up about as much room as a medium-sized dog if they're all together. But yeah, they're loud, they're mouthy. Every time the front gate goes or the postman approaches the door, it sounds like you've got a pack of hounds in the house.
Should we let them in now?
Why not?
Yeah, open the gates.
I can't find a setting because I'm looking on, because I'm sharing, I think.
You want me to do it?
Yes, please.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hello there.
Hi. Thought I'd get on nice and early to get a space.
Yeah, one of the select 1,000.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
That's it.
Morning, everybody.
It's nice to feel part of thousands.
I'm just unmuted it.
You have, Steve.
Thank you, Diane.
Morning all. Morning.
Hello.
Morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Luke.
Hello, Sharon. Good morning, Dominic, Jules.
So, should the stewards out? Let's do it. Rename. Come give me a cuddle, Flo.
Yes, I'm just putting the chat up in the top right hand corner so we can see it at the same.
New name.
Just before I start, I'll remind you, you're seeing a slide for the Spring Convention, the 12th to 14th of April. Come and start the celebrations for our 150th anniversary. If you want a BBKA mug, you can order it online and collect it at Spring Convention. That's the only place you're going to be able to get them. So if you want one, you've got to come to Spring Convention.
Can I hear myself?
Go away.
So whatever it is. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's on. It's not sit.
When I went to start the, it's probably worth reminding everybody to mute their microphone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all very much for joining us this early on a Saturday morning. A few housekeeping things. We are being streamed to YouTube so that we can get everyone in, and a way of recording it as well, so you can watch it again. If you don't want to appear on YouTube, don't speak and don't have your camera on. Please keep yourself muted during the session. We're going to take questions via the chat, and depending how the timing goes is how many questions we'll have. If we've got lots and lots of questions, we might ask our speakers to answer them outside of the meeting and produce an answer sheet in response. So thank you all very much. I will hand over to Nigel Semmence first of all. Nigel works at MBU, which is the National Bee Unit, and he's going to give us an update from them on the Asian hornet situation.
Good morning all, just bear with me while I try and share screens. Diane, could you confirm when it does something.
Yes, you're sharing now.
Super. And do I have a pointer flying around in the middle?
Yes.
Super. Good morning, all. Thank you for attending this. I'm going to give an update on the Asian hornet situation in the UK. This talk is mainly based on the one I did just before Christmas at the National Honey Show, but has an update on the results of the DNA and our spring planning. It will also cover the strategy, and we're in eradication, and that has not changed. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, the historic Asian hornet nests last year, DNA analysis, spring trapping, and some of the many improvements that are ongoing at the moment. As I said, eradication is the strategy. It's not going to change unannounced or quietly ever. If it does change, it's likely to happen over winter after we've analysed data, and there will be lots of announcements to go with that. The eradication strategy is one under the Healthy Bees plan of working together with stakeholders to prevent establishment, and is a government-led and funded response. It's generally funded by DEFRA, but there's many different agencies that DEFRA fund that contribute to that, and it's worth just highlighting them because people often say, why aren't you working with others? We're working with others all the time. It's just routine, it's just daily to us. We don't really notice it. But it is a multi-agency response in many ways. So lead gathering and triaging is done by UK CEH in Oxfordshire. The track and trace is done by the MBU, part of APHA. Destruction is done by the wildlife team in general. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, who are also part of APHA. The science is done by an outsourced company, Ferra Science Limited, which do the confirmation of identification, analysis of nests, size, number of combs, DNA analysis, and relatedness, which we'll talk about later on.
The Zoom thing. That'll do.
Someone mute that. There's a growing involvement with stakeholders, huge level of this. Every day we are talking with one or another stakeholder in one way, and that will become clear with the later talks. And there's been lots of interaction with BBKA, with bee farmers, with many others as well, and with local AHAT teams during all the responses. There's been involvement of beekeepers at one level or another, generally for the very good and with a lot of great help. And we couldn't have done this response without beekeepers at all. UK nests from 2016 to 2022, 13 in total in 11 sites. So that makes just under 2 nests per year. So compared to other countries, Belgium, Jersey, for example, that had their first incursions at the same time of us, we've kept the numbers really low. We had 13 other single hornet sightings over the same time period, but distributed a little bit more widely, some up into Scotland, but they were usually early in the year and queens associated with being moved in with goods of one form or another. 2023, a bit different, as it was across the whole of Europe. We had 72 nests, it got to date in there, and that is now the end of year, apologies for that. 72 nests in 56 locations. You're going to see these maps repeated through this at various different levels. In general, the spread was across the south coast, but mainly in Kent. We'll talk about the possible reasons for that in a moment, but also a very obvious distribution, if you like, up the main routes of transport towards London here. Also a few outliers, but all on the coast, close to ports, up in the north as well. So why the increase, and why mainly the south coast? Well, established population in France, average density of 1 nest per km squared, well stated in the literature. That is the average density across the whole of France. In the pockets in the southwest and certainly around villages and where human habitation, it goes up to 10 to 20 nests per km squared. It is obviously spread north at a rate of about 80 kilometres a year, and the density in northern France is now reaching high levels and obviously affecting us by, if you like, flooding across the channel, as we saw last year. It was also a very waspy, hornety year, long warm summer the year before. Lots of queens produced and a good spring, early summer last year as well. So lots of routes into the UK as well, only being 32 km from France, and lots of possibilities with that, in or on vehicles, boats, ferries, cars. The Poole to Cherbourg ferry regularly, almost, we've had about 4, I think, in total, has Asian hornets seen on it, for example. We triage sightings, as I mentioned earlier, through the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and the preferred way of doing that, the far better way, is through the Asian Hornet Watch app. I usually at this point ask my audience to put their hands up as to how many have it on their phones, but that's not going to work today. The more the merrier with that. It's a far better system. It records your position, but very importantly, it also gives you the option to say, actually, that's not an Asian hornet, that is a wood wasp, that is a hoverfly of some form, by looking at the photographs of them on there, and then it no longer becomes an Asian hornet sighting. It's still recorded as a sighting, but it becomes a sighting of one of those common species, and that happens in the background, and we get lots of Asian hornets saying disappear off because they're then correctly identified by the reporter. The other 2 ways are the online recording form and the alert email. We just prefer you to use the app because of that ability to check your ID first. Alerts received, obviously, in 2023 went up dramatically to just over 20,000. Normally we get between 5,000 and 10,000 a year, and that was mainly due to we started finding a larger number of nests, then we had more comms, then we had Asian Hornet Week. All of that led to more and more sightings coming in. The accuracy of the sightings, if you like, of all of them, we only had 150 confirmed Asian hornets. So it's a very low number that are correct. But the more sightings we get, the more chance of getting those correct ones as well, and the more awareness it's raising. So very quickly on this, you've seen this before, but everyone always says to me, it's very hard to spot Asian hornets. Well, it isn't. They are very easy to separate once you get your eye in. It doesn't take long. You just literally have to see your first one, and then it's easy to separate them from European hornets. Mainly we're talking here in the summer. I'll move on to talking in the spring later on, but in the summer it's mainly seen on ivy or other flowering plants, fallen fruit, trees or wood as paper sources, on carrion, and at that time in front of beehives as well. Also can be attracted to honey and wax smell, so not necessarily in the apiary, could be to where you process your honey as well. Oops, got ahead of myself there. So where do we find nests? In a wide range of sites, and you'll hear more from Alistair on this, I'm sure, later on. But in brambles, it's quite a common place for primaries and sometimes secondaries. Bird boxes, we've had primaries in. We've had a primary underneath a barbecue, as shown on the bottom left here. We've had them in bushes, hedges, trees, thatched roofs, a whole variety of sites. They are a very successful species that can nest almost anywhere. The Jersey rules talk about on buildings. We've not had so many on buildings. We've had a few in roofs, but not so many on the front of buildings or anything like that so far. Nest destructions, we use Vulcan P5 DP. DP stands for dustable powder, which is a 0.5% permethrin-based insecticide. It's applied with air lancers. There's nowhere we can't get to with this, with the range of lancers we've used, with cherry pickers as well. It's a very successful technique and very effective. We now have 14 APHA staff trained. That's changing daily, so I'm not sure that number is exactly accurate, but they all been on the safe use of biocides for the control of wasps and hornets, and we're making sure we've got those trained operatives spread across the country as well. So we're not just focusing down in Kent, so we're prepared for any ingresses further wider in the country as well. We use tree climbers through the plant health Health Arboricultural Services Framework Agreement. And why do we do that? Well, that's because that's already set up in APHA for use by various people for other insect pests where they need tree climbers. So we've just plugged into that. And anyone who's interested in that in the future you have to be an Arboricultural Association approved contractor first to be on that services framework. At the moment, we've got a fixed number on it, but that gets reviewed every couple of years. And when that does get reviewed next time around, we'll make sure everyone's aware of it. Nest analysis now complete, 72 nests in 56 locations. Here's pictures of the various nests as they go into the lab. You're not going to hear the full report today because it's not been submitted to DEFRA. However, that will be mentioned by one of the scientists. I think it might be Ben Jones at the latest, who will be talking at the BBKA convention. We'll go through the full report with you. One key point to emphasize to that is it's not just about the physical, how many combs in a nest, how big was the nest. It's also about the DNA analysis, and what sort of gone unseen in the background was all the sample collection done by the inspectors. And every time someone reported an Asian hornet, that Asian hornet was sent up to York in a barcoded tube, and then that DNA is compared to every nest. So we got a picture of where we may have nests that were missed, if you like, or where a hornet has drifted from another nest nearby, as well as all the hornets that have come from that nest as we've collected them before and after the destruction. And though all those results accumulate in this summary here, the important bit I will emphasize here, because I sometimes hear things said that we didn't kill nests, we've left nests in trees. None of that is true. All nests have been killed. 3 nests were unretrievable. They were killed, and that's when they were usually in roofs, and we couldn't, or thatch roof, for example, we didn't want to rip it apart, so we just kill the nest and then seal it up as best as we can. 4,605 hornets in total analysed, nearly 3,000 from the nests and nearly 2,000 from outside nests. From that analysis, they've been able to work out that there was 58 separate queens, so 44 were single nests where only the primary or the secondary was discovered, not both, and in 14 cases both the primary and secondary were discovered, and they're usually within less than 100 meters of each other. One really interesting point here that Ellie or Ben will expand upon more, is still being analysed to some degree, but is the majority of the queens in the nest have been mated with only 1 drone. The average in France is somewhere around 4 and 5, and higher than that in China. And that's sort of backing up the theory that we've got in the slightly inbred population, where we're getting them from France, so that new population in northern France is mating very closely with each other, and then we only got the mating with 1 drone in each case. Now that also leads to the nest analysis, and we
Has Nigel frozen?
It appears so.
I can't see him.
Across from France, or have died out at an early stage. So it's quite a
Nigel, you cut out just as you were starting to say nest analysis. Can you start again from that bit, please?
How did I cut out? But yes, I will, of course. I said, so going back to nest analysis, number of risk points where the evidence supports that there may be either undetected nests in an area, or the nests have reached the stage of producing sexual stages. I'm going to go over this several times, so it will become clearer. This is just like the summary. In the first case, the evidence supports there may be undetected nests is that we've had DNA from a hornet or 2 from around a nest that don't match that nest. Now, they could, in some cases, be hornets that have also drifted across from France and not be associated to the nest in the UK. It's very difficult for us
You've gone again, Nigel. I think Nigel's having problems with his internet. We'll let him come back. Someone has suggested it may be a bandwidth issue. So if you all turned off your cameras, that might help.
While we're waiting, shall I launch the poll?
Oh, that's a good idea, Claire. Yes, please.
Do you want to just introduce it?
Yes, we've got a question asking what you are, whether you are a coordinator, a verifier, a BBK member, but neither coordinator or verifier, or a non-BBK member, or even not a beekeeper, but interested in Asian hornets. Oh, that's really interesting watching that in real time.
Yes, Diane.
Hello, Diane.
Hello, Nigel's back. Right, do you want to share
Hi.
again?
Oh, has it unshared me? That's really not very
It
helpful.
threw you out, I think.
Okay. Where had I got to? Nest analysis?
You were partway through, I think, nest analysis. That's probably the best place to catch up again.
Okay. Feel I'm on a hamster wheel here. Right. Can you see that again?
Yes.
Super. So I think I'd got through the first part of nest analysis before I was booted out to DNA analysis. And in summary, the DNA analysis, because of the geography of the spread, being very close to France, and that there is just the sensitivity isn't enough for them to tell if there's any clear evidence for or against an established population, and hence why we're carrying on with eradication. One important factor in this, and that Ellie or Ben will expand upon this, is that where we had clusters of nests and we analysed all the major clusters, none of them had a single mother. So if we had 5 nests in one area with 5 queens in them, within each of those clusters there was more than one mother to those mothers, if that makes sense, mothers to those queens, which sort of is an indicator of not having an established population, but only a little bit of weight with that. But it is an important point. I don't seem to want to move me on now. Okay, so risk point wise, there are 4 clusters of risk points. So this map here, and this is going to get expanded on and enlarged as I go through this talk. The red dots are the nests from 2023. The blue dots are the risk points where we've got concern, and we're going to be doing some spring trapping round. There are 4 key areas. One is Plymouth, where 3 workers could not be allocated to a nest, and they could have been 3 workers that came across on a boat separately, all from the same nest in France, or they could have been an undetected nest in the Plymouth area. We can't separate those 2 things, hence we're going to do some surveillance around that area. And then Yarm had reached the stage of producing drones. Because the drones and the Gines stages overlap, and we can't tell what has previously been produced in the nest, there is a slight risk there, so we'll be doing some spring trapping around that area too. And then the 2 key areas are in Kent and East Sussex, 16 nests in total, where there's a mix of unallocated workers, in other words, workers we couldn't pin down to a nest, and produce sexual stages as well. And 5 of those nests have produced gynns. As I said, fuller details of this, and I'm sure that which nests have been produced gynns will be released at the BBKA Spring Convention. However, we are moving forward with trapping in the meanwhile. And the spring surveillance has just been approved on Monday by Lord Douglas Miller and Professor Nicholas Semmence. It had to go up to that level because this is a new strategy or change in strategy for us doing spring trapping. It's always been in mind, but because we've now switched to this point, we had to go to that level. Everything is ongoing. The preparation is ongoing at the moment. Traps are being made and the mapping's obviously already done, as you'll be seeing in a moment, and we will start doing queen trapping in about March in 5 km zones, hopefully. Now we are waiting approval internally. Waiting approval internally, and that will just move us forward when it starts on the ground. But as I said, preparations are ongoing. 1 trap per square km, which is a total of 1,000 traps in those blue zones. Be monitored twice a week. Now, those who are already doing spring trapping in those areas, and I know several associations, especially in Kent, obviously are, those are welcome to continue as well. There's no reason they can't work together in concert, so there's no concern there. The important bit is any Asian hornets that are trapped are reported with a photo on the app, preferably, and you hold on to the specimen. There will be a map on BBase that will show all the nest locations shortly. They're already on there from last year, but not in a very easy to see format. These plans have just been announced yesterday on BBase, and we'll expand on it as we go forward. And just to save on slides, I stuck the credible sighting we had in Westfield in East Sussex on the same slide. So that happened on, I think, 19th of January, if I remember rightly. It was found in the bottom of a car or just outside a car after a person had got out of it, and what they couldn't separate, the car had been across to France in recent time. So had that hornet came from France in the car, or had it came locally in that area, as it's close to one of these risk points, surveillance carrying on around that area. But the specimen was not collected. It was only a photo taken, hence why it stayed at credible sighting rather than confirmed. These are the squares in Plymouth, Devon, and if you're ready as the AHAT coordinator, and Martin will go on to explain how the coordinators work with us going forward. The AHAT coordinator in that area should be in contact with Megan. I'm sure they are already, and we will be doing the surveillance in this area, as I said. Now, this is just a clip, if you like, of our ArcGIS mapping. As the inspectors go round and put a trap in each area, each square changes a different colour, and as they visit the trap, it changes colour over, you know, is it left for 2 days, is it left for 3 days before it's checked. So we will keep that area monitored going forward. The next zone is in Yarm, North Yorkshire, and nest reached the stage of producing drones, and the RBI there for contact by the AHAT, if they're not already, is Donna Atkinson. Poor Tom gets a large proportion of the work, but there will be others working with him. And the first one is the Southwest Kent, East Sussex 3. This is one cluster here around Tenterton and area down to New Romney. And then the big area, unsurprisingly, is the far southeast of Kent, again with Tom, where there was the remainder of the nests in that area. So if you work it out, there are more nests on there than the number I've said were our risk points, and that's because it's just showing all the nests on here. And there's a large number of nests which were on our risk list, if you like, which are very close together, hence it's a smaller area. So the southeast Kent is an absolute crucial area. Other improvements going on in the background. We're working very, very closely with UKCH and BBKA, and Martin's going to talk about your side of that, but it all ties together. There's a lot of work between all three of those organisations on lead managing and triaging it, and I won't go into that in any more detail. We're also got, last year we used up to 6 people. We plan to use far less because of that, changing that system and improving it. It will become obvious from what Martin mentions. Obviously, stakeholder awareness is increasing all the time, and the impact of using Asian Hornet teams to help us becoming more involved is also increasing all the time. And then in the background of it, loads of training internally going on. We usually do training in each MBU region at the start of the year. We usually send them to Jersey. We cancelled it last year because we had so many of our own outbreaks to deal with. People were learning on the job like that, which is by far the best way, to be honest. We just about used all our inspectors, and we brought other people in as well. One really key thing going forward is we're now accessing the wider agency, and that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is preparing for that, involving with our wider contingency planning division. So we have about 60 inspectors. They have across animal and plant health close to 1,000 inspectors. We're obviously not going to get access to all of them, but the point is it's a pool of people who already have APHA equipment, already familiar with our systems, already have ArcGIS mapping, for example, and we can bring them in and pair them up with an inspector and actually spread our skill set very, very quickly. We also used 20 plant health inspectors last year, so they're already a resource ready for us, who are familiar with track and trace and familiar with working in FOBs. We are really widening this out, so we will actually end up with forward operating bases if we end up at anywhere near the same level as last year or more, which will be manned by people from the wider APHA, which will provide admin assistance, do the paperwork, collect the samples, arrange for the couriers, do all that work, so our bee inspectors are left free to get on with the crucial job of doing the track and trace and the destruction. And absolutely critical to that, revamped the slide a bit, but I haven't changed the meaning of it. Asian Hornet teams are absolutely critical. They've been essential all the way through our response. The key areas you deal with, obviously, is raising awareness, helping the public, beekeepers with ID, that getting that improvement of people knowing the difference between a wasp, a bee, and a hornet is crucial. And then also this wider monitoring that you can do, as will be described by Alistair and others. That's absolutely key as well. And as Martin's going to mention, the improvements that we're implementing with UKCEH to pass more of those unverified sightings. So these are not the confirmed Asian Hornets. These are someone who convinces us a little bit more than just I've seen an Asian Hornet and nothing. It gives a bit more of a better description. Those ones are going to be passed down to yourselves for follow-up, and that is essential to us. Other things that we've approved over the winter is we've produced an Asian Hornet nest identification sheet, which is available in the normal means from the MBU office, and you can also get it as a hard copy as well for posters, and that will aid people with identifying Asian Hornet nests as compared to other wasp species. We've also worked over winter with wider awareness, and the key one I was involved with was with the local resilience forums, and these are basically usually run by the fire service in each county, and they are run by the emergency services and have plug into councils and everyone, and they're really there for dealing with large fires, with floods, with bombs and the rest. But they have moved Asian Hornet up their risk register from not being on it to identified potential long-term risk. This is an important thing for us. If we want help from councils, we can point them to this. I'm having a meeting shortly with the National Resilience Forum, and we're hoping to get this rolled across all counties' local resilience forums in due course. On their emerging risk page, it links to all the ID sheets, all our websites, and if BBKA want to have links to their Asian Hornet pages on there in due course, they're welcome to contact them and do that, or contact me and I can put you in contact with them as well. some of the improvements happening in the background, and this slide is out of date every time I revamp it, is there are loads amount of Asian hornet monitoring selective traps coming forward all the time. Many have been tried in France, many are being tried in Jersey. We need to hear more and more about how people are getting on with them, how selective they actually are. One we tried down in Kent with the Andermatt one, and that's actual Asian hornets from Kent in the Andermatt trap on the right there. But there are other brands, and I just welcome you to try them all. Report back to the manufacturer how you find they are with bycatch. That's really the very key point. There's sort of two key points: do they catch Asian hornet, and the other key point is what bycatch do they catch, and does it release? They are usually these are all far better than the standard old-fashioned kill traps, and where we want to move to going forward. Summary, what do we want you to do, and where are we? Well, we destroyed all nests last year. There's a low risk some nests have produced guines before destruction, and there's a low risk that we had some undetected nests. So we're doing spring trapping near those sites where we had sexual stages and where the DNA analysis indicates undetected nests. We welcome Asian hornet team spring trapping there. Just liaise with your RBI and make them aware of it, just so we know. It's interesting to work together and see the results of this, but the really important thing is to report positives. Get asked about wider areas, that's key. If you're close to any, and what's close means, so I've gone for 10 km here, to any 2023 nest or risk point such as a port, then by all means, as a beekeeper, do selective spring trapping. It's worth doing in that. I'm not saying do spring trapping like we have to the 1 km square. I'm just saying in your garden or similar place if you're close to one of those risk points that aren't in those zones. Otherwise, only do trapping if required in response to a sighting or alert, and this nicely links into Martin's talk after this, or if you get an alert on B-base as well. And thank you very much, and I'll finish there. And sorry for the interruption in the middle.
Thank you very much, Nigel. There is a question, but as it's not quite Asian hornets about general inspections, I think it'd be more appropriate in light of the time overrun already for us to answer that separately. So we'll send you that.
Yeah, send that forward to me by all means, and I'll pass that on to the relevant person. That probably sits outside my.
Yeah. If you want to stop sharing.
Will do.
Thank you. Right, our next speaker is Martin Smith, who is the ER2 manager for BBKA. So are you ready, Martin?
Working how to stop sharing first.
I think I've just stopped you, Nigel.
Oh, good, cool.
Yes, I'm ready. Can you see the right screen, Diane?
I can indeed, yes, thank you.
Okay. Morning, everybody. As Diana said, I am ER2 project manager, which is the BBKA membership system. This is not a talk about the BBKA membership system. It is a talk about how the link to National Bee Unit works and what we think between us that the roles of coordinators and verifiers should be. Okay. There's two main areas that we see for beekeepers within Asian hornet, and what have we got that the NBU hasn't got? And the answer is numbers. There are tens of thousands of beekeepers. There are less than tens of thousands of National Bee Unit people, even if Nigel sweeps in absolutely everybody he can. So we can cover a lot more ground, and it's the best use of that. The first area is raising public awareness. Everybody has, whether it's posters on buses or whether it's any of the local plans and talking to local radio and newspapers and things like that. That's number one that we can obviously do very well. Most of my talk's not about that, but that is as important as the next bit of it. The other bit is investigating Asian hornet sightings. As Nigel mentioned, the Asian hornet app has been used, and they were up to 20,000 sightings last year. I think there is a general expectation with more publicity and this, that, and the other, that number will continue to rise. It went up from 5,000, I think, the previous year to 20,000. And that is the focus of those areas. And it would be reasonable to expect a lot more activity there that we need to be capable of doing something with. Okay, we have split out the arrangements in terms of coordinators, and part of the reason for the poll was just to establish who the people were on this talk. And there are about just over 40% of all the coordinators in the country are on this session, which is that's a reasonable number effectively, to explain the role to the people. One or two are county, association, and maybe one for each branch or division. We've been asked a couple of times, can we have 20 or 30 coordinators? Well, that isn't the primary purpose. If you the National B unit and others want one link person in a reasonable geographical area. Depends on the size of your county, obviously, and where you are, but that person needs to get relatively slick about it. So you don't want 50 coordinators, because each one might get one request. That will not be sensible and will be not efficient. It also makes a difference where you are in the country. There's a lot more activity, obviously, as Nigel has said, in Kent. Then there might be an argument for a higher density of coordinators, but just bear that in mind. What's the role of them? Act as the public contact in the local area when there's a sighting of Asian Hornet is number one. Pass on the sightings, reported sightings, to the team of their verifiers. So if there is a reported sighting through the Asian Hornet app or any other method, then it's up to the coordinator to actually either do it themselves if they want to, or pass it on to a local verifier to confirm it is or it isn't a sighting of hornets. To be the link person between government agencies, which I'll come back onto, and local verifiers. So where Nigel was saying the RBI in Plymouth, I think it was, will be in contact with somebody, that somebody will be the coordinator in the local area. It won't be anybody else. It will be that coordinator. And I think I saw on the chat before that somebody from Plymouth said nobody's been in touch with them yet. If they are the local coordinator, well, then that they are the person to whom the RBI will be speaking to, not anybody else. If they're not the coordinator, then okay, it will be different. And I've just added that in red, seeing as Nigel announced it yesterday, to local contact for spring trapping. Same principle. It's the coordinator. Equally important is to report back the results of their investigations. If you are in an area where you're doing spring trapping, that information needs to come back into the system, if you just want to use that general word, so people know what the results are. It's no good going doing it and not telling anybody. That's in some ways worse than not doing it in the first place. So there will be a system which I'll come on to for doing that reporting back. And finally, they're the person for developing the publicity, and that, bear in mind, in your location, the publicity in Cumbria is going to be very different from the publicity in Kent, and there's no sense in a national plan from the BBKA about publicity. It is area specific. That's one group of people, of which within England there are 200 coordinators at the moment, and if we look at the maps, they're reasonably well spread. The other half then is the verifiers, people who are interested in helping in whatever way they can within their area. As many as branches would want, again, more, there's going to be more down in Kent than there are further up in the country, and they are the coordinators' team of volunteers to assist if investigating a sighting of Asian Hornet, be prepared to assist and with monitoring, trapping, whatever else is necessary, as the local coordinator says. And again, the coordinator would be the link person between the verifier and the National B unit. What isn't going to work is if all the verifiers are saying, well, I'm doing this and I'm going to tell the B unit what I'm doing, it needs to come through that local coordinator so that the results of any analysis and any trapping can be centrally collated. Yeah, as I've just said there. As the MBU request it, it'll come through the coordinator. Okay, so there's those two levels. The next bit is not a teaching, as I say, on ER2. It is more for the coordinators, and so people understand what information we are storing and where it can be accessed. For ER2, for those not involved at all, is the national membership system of all beekeeping associations in England and Wales. And there is there on the main menu, there's a menu option that says maps. Within that, there's the swarm listing, which we're not really discussing at the moment. There is a list, and then there are 3 maps that relate to Asian Hornet coordinators and verifiers. An internal map, an external map, and a list of local verifiers. The external map is a map of the coordinators in the whole country. I've zoomed it in a bit just to show an area, and you can see what information is there on it. That map is on the BBKA website. It is on the WBKA website, and it can be on your local website if you so choose. It's a public map with the name of the person and his or her phone number, no more. There is then an internal map, internal to beekeeping associations, anybody who uses the membership system, and crucially the National Bee Unit and UKCEH, who are the agency that run the Asian Hornet app, as Nigel said. And that map shows the email address as well. All the communication will be by email in terms of following things through. So that is the key, the email address is there. It's not publicly available on the internet. Don't worry, your email address is not going out to the public. It is, however, available to, at the moment, it's only the National Bee Unit and UKCEH, but potentially if National Bee Unit used another government agency, then potentially. And finally, there is a list of the verifiers. These are the local area verifiers, and you as a verifier, you can say after my phone number, I only want to be contacted by WhatsApp, or this is my work location, whatever you want to say to assist the coordinator in telling them, this is how I can help and this is how I can't help, whatever it happens to be. That information is recorded within the membership system, and it enables the local coordinators to see in detail where the nearest person is. Your email's on there, so they can email you. You can add notes to the phone number, as I just said, and the local officer can zoom right in, because obviously there might be a whole lot of people in the same location, so he can choose the right person. In addition, now we have actually, having since launched that map, we've now changed it so that the verifiers that are in an adjacent area are shown. So on the previous map, I had all the people in red are in that area's local branch. In that one, there's the people in adjacent branches. We are not displaying their email address because, again, they may not wish to give their email address to the neighbouring association, but their name and their phone number is there, so that they can be contacted by a coordinator and say, look, there is a potential sighting you're the nearest person. Are you willing to join my gang, effectively, of verifiers? And the person might say, no, I'm not interested. I only work with my own association. I don't want to work with you. That's fine. They can then say, no, not interested, and that's it. Alternatively, yeah, I'm more than happy to go and investigate that, and they can supply them with their email address. Okay, so that is the basic recording system of the information. Where we then see the issue and the process working, as Nigel said, the Asian Hornet Watch is the preferred system for reporting sightings, credible sightings, this, that, and the other. There were 20,000 sightings last year, and we think that's going to be a lot more this year. So we've got to have a slicker system than we did last year. Last year, it was extremely labor intensive and it went through a long route. So by the time it got down to a local beekeeper, it was probably a week, 10 days later in some cases, and 4 or 5 people had the hands on it. Just trying to make that a lot slicker this year. What are we trying to do? There are 3 specific instances when somebody can put something on an Asian Hornet Watch, on Asian Hornet app. The first one is it's clearly not an Asian Hornet. They send in an email. Sorry, they don't send in an email. They record it on the app, and the Asian Hornet app team, which is UKCEH, would look at that and say, well, it is an Asian Hornet. It is a giant wood wasp, whatever it happens to be. They'll email them back, and that's the end of it. Nothing else needs to be done by anybody. The second criteria is it's clearly an Asian Hornet, in which case it's passed direct to Nigel's gang of people, and they get on tracking and tracing, finding the nest and destroying it. That information needs to be supplied to beekeepers, but it doesn't need to be, they don't need to immediately act on it. It's the NBU's team that need to act on it. The bit that we're interested in here from beekeepers, and where beekeepers can help and the teams can help, is it might be an Asian Hornet. So it's a blurred photograph, but it could be an Asian Hornet. That is an area where the coordinator will be passed the information, and they will either do it themselves or ask someone else to do it for them. It might be too far from the existing Asian Hornet area with the general vicinity. So using Nigel's previous slide there, 10 kilometers, it's 10 kilometers away or within 10 kilometers, maybe. That becomes a slightly higher risk area. And even if it's a bit vague, then yes, perhaps somebody would go and be asked to go and investigate. Good description, no actual photograph. Another example. Where people have got to be careful is, I saw a big yellow insect through my car window. Well, yeah, okay. What are you going to do about that? I suspect at the moment the Asian Hornet app team would say an Asian Hornet doesn't look yellow. It looks more black than yellow. Is there any evidence that somebody can follow up? Probably not. The guy was driving along the roads, that's the end of it. Is it worth, therefore, sending that out to be investigated? Probably not. However, if it was maybe in the sort of the medium risk area within 10 kilometers, maybe it is, and maybe they're then asked to do a monitoring trap. That's grey, and it will be determined by the extent of the incursion in the current year and a bit of trial and error. So, but people will not be sent to investigate something that there is just no evidence. There's no point. All it is a waste of people's time. Okay. The general principle will be there is an email that the Asian Hornet app guys have decided is worth investigating. It will be sent directly from the Asian Hornet app administration people, which is UKCEH, directly to the coordinator. They have the coordinator's details off the maps, and they will email them directly. The National Bee Unit, the BBKA, the local association may all be copied in, but it is basically a direct communication from UKCEH to that coordinator. The coordinator will acknowledge the request and either investigate it themselves or get one of their verifiers to do it. Straightforward. If it's a verifier, okay, they will go and look, and they will report back to the coordinator. And there's a report back to the NBU. And this will be a standard button, effectively. Given that we expect volume here, what we don't want is a huge long story. We want a photograph. If it is, they're happy it is an Asian hornet, it would be a photograph and it would be a report, and it would go through on the app as a confirmed sighting. It's the button. If it's not an Asian hornet, no further action. Not enough info, no further action. Was an Asian hornet, it's followed up by the MBU. So there's three things there. Photographs and whatever else are important. The other aspect to this is that whilst the coordinators and the verifiers have their postcodes and the postcodes are on the map, the sighting that is sent from the Asian hornet guys will have latitude and longitude coordinates. So that is an exact set of coordinates of where it is. It won't just say it's in a postcode. It will say it is in a specific area and a little map with a pin on it so that the person can use it. And we are using longitude and latitudes in the background for this rather than postcodes. And that's obviously what the app uses as well. When somebody reports it, it knows where they are on their location. If the coordinator doesn't reply within, I've said 36 hours, but we might tweak that, it comes back to the, comes back into the system and they send it to a second person. That isn't to say that you've actually investigated it. It says, yeah, I'm on with this. I can do it. And, you know, I will action it and I'll come back to you with the results. It depends where you are in the country, and it depends in particular what time of the year it is. If there is a sighting in May time, there's no guidance going to be produced. If the actual investigation is not done for a week, it's probably not too critical. If it is in early September, then really that investigation needs to be done absolutely as quick as possible, because we're at the point where the guidance could be produced. So the timing matters in terms of how quickly coordinators acknowledge they're going to get on with it and actually doing the report. But earlier on, apart from the spring trapping side of things, early on, it's less critical. If the second coordinator doesn't respond, okay, the fall, it goes back to the BBKA. And at that point, the BBKA office will get involved to try and actually find somebody, but hopefully we won't have any situations like that. That removes all of these emails that were floating around last year in terms of people in BBKA and NBU and the coordinator sometimes ending up with the same request 3 times. It will come from the Asian Hornet app team firstly. And the final thing on that is, if there are any positive sightings in the area, the National Bee Unit will report that to the local coordinator as soon as they can, so that the coordinator knows the position. And if they are working on something, they will report that to that person, and that is the central point of contact, as opposed to finding out about it by this method or another method. And there is a commitment from Nigel and his guys to make sure that people are aware of that and they're aware of what's going on, given that there was a bit of criticism last year about, well, the MBU are doing something and they haven't told us. There is a commitment to ensure that they are discussing it with you. Okay, there is one other thing I've been asked to show now, which relates to mapping of your membership. This is not really strictly to do with Asian Hornet, but some of the trustees asked me just to show you this, because doing the mapping, we have then done 1 or 2 other things. If you are involved in the membership, at the bottom of your membership list, there is a button that says View Members on the Map within your system. It's a new feature. That is a map of all the members of a particular branch in the northwest of England. You get a visual representation of where people are. You need to be part of ER2. That's straightforward. And you can categorize your members wherever you are, however you want to. So, for example, I can map all the 2024 beginners. I could map all the people who have passed the basic and have got 5 colonies insured with BDI, so reasonable sized beekeepers, or I could map all the members who've passed general husbandry. So there's lots of different ways you can map your members using this facility, and that's been asked to show that out separately. Okay, any questions? Well, you don't want questions now, Diane, do you really? But if there are any questions about the membership side of things, then the normal membership question is there, or, well, that's very good, but I am a coordinator and nobody's told me that. Then email that question through to us, or how do I do this, that, and the other, and we will respond there. Okay.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'm sure that was really useful for people to see the flowchart, and I think we'll publish some of that on the BBKA website as well. I am making a note of the questions and filing them to be dealt with. Our next speaker, if you can stop sharing, Martin, is Kirsteen Thorne, who's our outreach worker, who we've took on to start dealing with the Asian hornet things, but she will be dealing with other topics that are of importance to us. One of them's the tree planting we're doing to celebrate our 150th anniversary, and she'll be talking to people about honey and other campaigns we'll have. So I will spotlight Kirsteen for everyone, and over to you, Kirsteen. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Morning, everyone. Lovely to be here this morning. And I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who has reached out to me since I started in this post. It's been just over 2 weeks already, and it's been a really, really busy 2 weeks, but a number of people have reached out to explain their own individual experiences and situation within their own associations. Some of the best practice that has worked well for them in terms of engaging with their communities, ideas, suggestions, places they'd like me to contact, and tips basically for just how to get the word out there. I think what the key issue really is that this is a new post. This is a brand new role. So I think we're all kind of feeling our way with it a little bit in terms of where I fit into that communication structure that Martin has just kind of explained there, and also Nigel has touched on as well. And I think the message is, once again, I'll just reiterate that communication is key. Essentially, a lot of those things that Martin has just mentioned that the various coordinators would be doing, I absolutely want to be there to help support you with as much as I can, from sitting in my home in Norfolk, just one of me. Obviously, I can't get involved in the minutiae of everything you do within your communities, but I do absolutely want to be there as best as I can to help you with that. Alongside that, I have been focusing on engaging with, on a national level, essentially, to try and raise awareness of the Asian hornet threat. I've currently reached out to more than 60, I was just counting up this morning, on my database, all the people I've reached out to. It's in excess of 60 now. Various different individuals, organisations, groups, businesses, industries, interested parties, political parties. They range from wildlife and conservation trusts, ports and ferry terminals, vineyards, the British Beer and Pub Association, because we had an idea to get an awareness campaign going on the backs of beer mats, knowing how much Asian hornets love a bit of a tipple. Gardening groups and associated publications, outdoor education groups, coastwatch stations, the media, a number of different magazines, programs, as well as notable individuals that I would hope would be on board with this message, people who have a high profile in the world of conservation. I'll be honest with you, thus far, the responses that I've been getting on the whole have been, we're already doing this, which is great to hear. My response back has been, that's wonderful. Could you also do this? There's a bit of a wall of silence at the moment from those who clearly aren't taking this seriously enough, or my email has gone into their junk folder. Just a word of warning, actually, I have just received an email from somebody this morning apologising for a delay in replying to my email because, and this is from a member, my email has gone into their spam folder. So if you wouldn't mind checking your spam folders as well, just to make sure that any messages I've sent haven't gone into there. So I'm working on a national scale. I have had some good responses, and I've been sending out resources. I've had some good responses from ports, from some wildlife and conservation trusts, some vineyards as well. And I'll keep pushing, basically. If I don't get the response I want, I will go back on another angle, or I'll try and find another contact, and I'll keep pushing. As well as that, I'm also trying to focus on helping in Kent, obviously, and surrounding areas. I know for a fact that a huge amount of work is already taking place by so many people, actually, across the country. And many of you have already done so much. And I'm also fully aware of the fact that a number of the organisations and the groups that I'm contacting, you've already been there and done it. There was a situation, I think, this week where I received a response from somebody at the RSPB at the same time as somebody else received the same response from the same person. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter if we're bombarding them. If I've emailed an organisation and someone else is already on it and did the same thing a couple of months ago, then we're less likely to be ignored, aren't we, if there's more of us doing it. So I don't see that as a problem. I am just aware of the fact that it probably is happening because there is such a huge amount of work going on by you individually. And of course, there's different levels of engagement depending on where you are in the country and where you are down the line. The first thing I did, I'm based in Norfolk, the first thing I did was connect with the Norfolk BKA. We've had one sighting in a forest, and that's it. Now you compare that to your experiences down in Kent, and it's a very, very different matter, isn't it? So I'm aware of the fact that different people are on at different places down the line with this, and I am doing the best to kind of provide the support and the help that I can where it's needed at the moment. So I have been engaging with a number of you, a number of members down in Kent. I've had some really useful conversations. I've also connected with Jersey. I've connected with the Isle of Wight to find out sort of how they've tackled things. So I've reached out and made contact with the media in Kent and just picked up on some of those areas with organisations in Kent that weren't particularly responding in a positive manner, just lending that extra voice. And that's what I intend to do going forward. There's still a number of areas and industries that I'm planning on targeting. I saw somebody put a question in their comments about, are we going to focus on camping and caravanning? Absolutely, it's on my list. That is on my list of the next holiday accommodation, cottages, all of that. They'll all be getting emails from me. Large landowners as well is another one. I know a lot of you have said the MOD in particular, various safari parks, all owning large swathes of land that we really need to be getting access to. So I'm working on targeting those as well. So how can I best help you? Well, communication is absolutely key here. Communication both internally in terms of how you update your AHAC coordinators and work together to speak to each other, but how that then feeds back to me, so I know what you're doing and I know how I can then support you. Alongside that, I'm working on putting together a communications package which will feature much of what some of you in various parts of the country have already built on. And I would just like to say thank you to everybody who I've spoken to who's told me, we've got this resource, we've got this draft letter, we've got this template press release. And everybody who I've said, can I use that? Can I share that out with a credit to your association? Has said, yes, absolutely. Just share whatever you want. Had a really lovely conversation with Chloe Underwood yesterday. They've got lots and lots of resources that they're really happy to share as well. So I'll be sort of pulling together what I think are sort of the most useful bits into a communications package. That will probably feature a press release you can use, an urgent help letter that could go out to local organisations, a letter to MP, any kind of fact sheets, ID posters that can be printed off within your community and that people can put up. If anybody's got any ideas of anything that they should be added to that, or that they think would be useful to put in that, then please do just absolutely send it my way. And I'm just sort of rewriting things, making things more generic. And the idea being that you can then use that however you want. You could take it and completely rewrite it if you like. You can localize it yourself. You can personalize it for particular notable people within your community. And then hopefully you'll sort of have a package to go essentially. And like I say, many people will have already done that. I know that, you know, a lot of these resources are coming from places down on the South Coast that have already had to bring a lot of this stuff together themselves, but some of you probably won't have had to do that yet, and hopefully that will be of help. Alongside that, you may have seen I sent out an email yesterday. I think what we really need to be doing, the best thing we can do to raise awareness and get people on board and communicate within our local communities, is to utilise social media. I think if you can get on your local Facebook pages, whether it's your local village, town, city, council, they'll all have a community Facebook page. Just share as much as you can, really, in terms of any kind of information, updates, national press articles, information articles about the Asian hornet, as well as anything that you can put on there that sort of furthers the aims or shares information about the BBKA and what we're trying to do. That would be really, really helpful. And obviously going forward, really interesting to see what those risk points are in Nigel's talk there. Certain risk points that most of which I was aware of, but others that I didn't. I'm just seeing all the messages coming in now. Railways are a big issue. They're on my list as well. Haulage companies, motorway service stations, basically any large areas of land, anywhere that these little blighters can jump on a lorry or jump on a train or set up a nest on a patch of land, then I'm going to get round to hopefully emailing them and getting onto them at some point. Yeah, like I said, we'll be focusing attention on those risk points, some of which I wasn't aware of, that Nigel mentioned. And interesting to pick up on resilience forums. I know that down in Kent, they've had a little bit of trouble with people with the resilience forum taking this seriously, not really seeing it as a bit of a threat. So it's really good news to hear that actually that might be an attitude that's changing. So I'll be reaching out to some of the resilience performers as well, mainly in those kind of, you know, hotspot and risk point areas to start with, but then kind of spreading out to sort of further counties as time goes on. So I think the message really is just, I'm here. Like I say, it is just me, and I'm feeling my way with this a little bit. It's only been a couple of weeks, but essentially I want to be able to support you as best I can. And yeah, just if the AHAT coordinators want to drop me a line at any time to talk about areas that they're perhaps having a bit of difficulty with getting much of a response from, then I'm absolutely here to kind of lend a bit of weight and an extra voice to that. outreach.officer@bbka.org.uk. Check your spam folders, guys, and make sure my emails haven't gone on there. But thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch so far. Some fantastic suggestions, and every day I get another email where someone goes, have you thought about this safari park, or have you thought about these guys, they own a lot of land? And I'm like, brilliant. And that's absolutely what we need going forward. So really looking forward to working with you all going forward, and thank you for the warm welcome so far.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kirsteen. It's so good to have you on board. I am recording all the comments and suggestions so we can go through them all later. Our next speaker is from Jersey, and Alistair is the Invasive Species Officer for Jersey, and he's here to give us a talk on an update on Jersey and what BBKA could learn from the Jersey experience. So are you ready to share?
Hang on, let me just.
There we go.
Does that look good? Sorry, I'm just going to get up a view where I can see some notes, and hopefully that will work for me. Yeah, and I'll take a laser pointer as well, so hopefully you can see that moving around the screen there.
Lovely, thank you.
Good. Right, welcome everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. You know, listening to what I've been hearing, I'm not quite sure what Jersey can teach you guys anymore. It's amazing to see the sort of organisation and the brains coming together, and I'm sure it'll pay dividends in the future for you. So yeah. Anyway, some lovely pictures of Asian hornets. I'm sure you've all seen them. I hope you have, and are certainly familiar with what they look like. I do deal with other invasive species as well, from koi poo to plenty of invasive plants as well. So Asian hornets is a big part, but not the only part of my work. Look, no apologies for lots of figures and statistics and things like that, but hopefully these will they kind of tell a story. It may be a story that's sort of mirrored to a point for you guys in the UK, and on a much bigger scale, of course. Bear that in mind. Jersey is just 120 square kilometers in size. So our season starts off with a spring queen trapping program, and there's some sort of figures here about that program. We had a massive acceleration last year. I mean, it was quite startling. It really was, with 470 reports of 76 reports of spring queens. The trapping program caught 69% of them, 298. We were really pleased with that, because in previous years, the traps didn't seem to catch many of them at all. In fact, we had very low numbers in 2022, and we're really completely mystified by that, because we had an acceleration in nests. So all the nests that we had in 2022, where were all the queens in the springtime, that they were not caught in traps? One of the figures expose, these figures here, the 135 exposed the role of members of the public in catching queens. So that's 135 queens that were found by members of the public in their kitchens, in their living rooms, in a garden shed, and they caught them, and they were killed as well. There's always, with Asian hornet reports, of course, plausible ones or confirmed reports from a photograph. We would confirm it from a photograph rather than necessarily a sample. Confirmed reports from a photograph that are escapees. So we had 20 escapees and 21 plausible reports. So to be plausible, I need some evidence that it was an Asian hornet. Perhaps the reporter has some experience of seeing Asian hornets, working with Asian hornets, or they could describe it very well, or we knew of a nest very close indeed. It might be something with a report of a worker, of course. But those figures tell a story. This coming year, we're going to try and expand the spring queen trapping program from about 340 traps to 500 of them. If we map those, you get that. So that's our island of Jersey. About 22 kilometers to the east of the island, you have the Cottontown Peninsula. And there is an area directly east of Jersey where I think they have had 15 nests per square kilometre. I think that's the densest area of Asian hornets on the Cottontown Peninsula. One of the things you'll notice from the map is that the red pins are caught in official traps, and there's a massive density of them in the northeast of the island. So that's the closest part to the French coast. Yeah, the yellow pins are ones caught by members of the public. The blue ones are escapees, and the grey ones are plausible ones. It's always been a bit quieter on the west side of Jersey. I think it's exactly 80% of those spring queens were in the eastern half and 20% in the western half. But from last year, it is certainly getting busier in the west of Jersey, and maybe we've got that invasion front moving westwards, and we can experience a greater density of queens and nests in those areas in years to come. On the side of nests, Again, we had a massive increase last year from 174 nests up to 339. Those of you who watch our Facebook group, administered by John de Carteret, the Jersey Asian Hornet group, it's called, you'll know that our last nest was in late December, and I'll mention that in a second, actually. But you can see how those sort of nest numbers have developed over the last sort of 4 years. What will happen this year is anybody's guess. We talk about primary nests and secondary nests, and I've mentioned tertiary nests there as well. I wouldn't get too hung up on this sort of terminology. The primary nests are really what the queen builds on her own. In fact, some people call those embryo nests. If I remember right, about 26 of those 114 primary nests were embryo nests. So that was just the queen on her own. You can't track those nests, so they are reported by members of the public, which I suppose leads to a point about, there's plenty of information on the app about identifying insects, but there's very little information on the app about identifying nests. It's not easy to identify an Asian hornet nest in those early embryo stages versus a wasp nest, and I normally ask people to identify the insect rather than the net trying to worry about identifying the nest itself. A massive uplift in the number of nests there. We, like you, receive lots of reports of Asian hornets. Numbers are rather at different scales, but they did jump from just under 1,000 to over 2,000. That's probably an underrepresentation, actually. In October, it was just manic. It really was. And I received almost endless reports. My phone was ringing constantly, constant emails, and the app as well, about hornets on fallen fruit, in particular. Apples, pears, plums, and figs were the main culprits, and grapes as well. I know of people who removed every piece of fruit from their trees, actually, so to avoid the hornets being tempted to come into their garden. It was just quite extraordinary, actually. But clearly those late season hornets after the sugars in that fallen fruit. Reporting mechanisms, bit different to you because we have a sense of community in Jersey. So we use email, do use phone. Quite a lot of people call up really scared. And in Jersey, I think that those scared people, they need a kind of a more instant response. How instant that'll be, but at least gives them an opportunity to talk to somebody. And we do use the app, the same app that you use in the UK, though it's a little bit more fiddly for me to process those reports. I triage the reports as well, so very much part of my work. I am able to pass these reports on to the volunteers and get them to investigate if necessary and try and work out whether it's it can be confirmed as an Asian hornet or not. Just some pretty graphs here. First 3 years of our incursion into Jersey, 2017 through to 2019. We had a rather strange drop in 2020. Some people link that to COVID. And then since then, the numbers have accelerated rather rapidly with those 476 queens and those 339 nests. One wonders what would have happened if we hadn't taken up those 476 queens. It's uncertain how many of them would have gone on to have formed nests, but I am no doubt in my mind that taking those 476, it wasn't actually a full 476, some escaped, but taking that sort of order of number of queens out, I'm clear that it made a massive difference to the work which was incredible anyway, that we had to do in dealing with those 339 nests. Some dates here. What can you take from these? The date the first queen's caught in traps, I would say you don't need to start trapping too early. You know, the queens, if they're emerging now, that I don't think they're going to survive. They're going to get taken out by probably a change in the weather. And even if they have just emerged, these queens have got to forage for themselves and their developing larvae and that developing nest for about 2 months before the first workers are produced and the queens are no longer or very little leaving the nest. So things for us kick off towards the end of March normally. We will set up our spring queen trapping program from the 20th of March this year and no earlier than that. I know I'm aware of a few beekeepers having traps out there, but not many at all. But the official program will start on the 20th of March. Last year, we ran the queen traps until really late, much later than they do in Guernsey. So we finally caught the last queen in a trap on the 13th of July. The next figure down, 1st of June, first worker caught. So there's a massive overlap there between workers and queens. And in many of the traps, you're getting workers and queens. I assume, we're not able to do the analysis, I assume that these workers are from different nests to the one with a queen in. I assume that when workers are produced, then the queen will not risk herself or minimally risk herself leaving the nest. But I believe it's really important to catch as many queens as possible. So we ran it until we're kind of pretty certain we weren't going to catch any more. The first nests were always reported. They're not tracked. They're reported in early-ish April. And it's usually an embryo nest in someone's garden shed or something like that. They're not quite sure what it is, but they report it, and it's very rapidly pinned down as being an embryo Asian hornet nest. In terms of queens and the reporting them, I had a figure here. We had 28 queens caught in traps on one day. That was the 12th of June. Remarkable. Most of them in the northeast of the island, I suppose. Yeah. You need workers to be able to track a nest. So last year, the first nest was tracked on the 26th of June. It's occasionally been a little earlier than that. Of course, you only need one worker to show you the way to the nest, but it does help if you've got a few more to play with, I suppose. But and I put N50 in there. So that was nest number 50 last year. That means 49 before that, they weren't tracked. They were reported by the members of the public. Again, coming back to good ID skills for identifying nests and a mechanism at least to report it and perhaps get it checked out properly by somebody who's competent to do that. It is so much easier to take a nest out when it's the size of a tennis ball than when it's the size of a space hopper at the top of a tree. So if public awareness about the primary nests can be raised and you can get more of them at that stage, you're going to save yourself a massive amount of work later on, plus all the attendant risks about nests as well. So, you know, a couple of thousand of defensive hornets in them, and they will defend it. Come on to that later. Yeah, a few more figures here. Nests in brambles, Nigel mentioned that. Nests in brambles are a high risk. Have we had them disturbed? We have had them disturbed, not by blackberry pickers, for example, but mainly people doing sort of maintenance works on fields and things like that. And it's not a pretty sight at all. One chap last year was very lucky. He just happened to be flailing a field of brambles on a fairly cool day. So he just happened to have all the windows of his tractor cab closed, and he suddenly thought, what the hell is going on here? And he had hornets bouncing off the windows of his cab. And had a window been open, it would have been a very different story indeed. Just goes to show. In Jersey last year, we tracked 207 nests, a massive increase on the year before. That's a hell of a lot of work. I try and get hours from the volunteers about how long it takes them to track a nest. It's not easy to do so, but I reckon that on average, a nest takes about 25 hours. Some fall into place very quickly indeed. Others take probably pushing on 150, 200 hours, something like that, for various reasons: terrain, luck, and just being just very awkward indeed. It's also not so easy tracking nests when you've got hornets flying off in multiple different directions from your bait that's attracting them, and also if you've got other insects such as European hornets that disturb the Asian hornets while they're feeding at a bait station, you're trying to get that tracking information. It doesn't make it easy if the European hornets are around. Some people set up 2 baits and try and pray that the European hornets pick one and Asian hornets pick another. We always record the number of nests after the 1st of October. That's a fairly arbitrary figure, but sometime after the 1st of October, nests could be issuing the guines. I took down a nest on the 26th of September last year, and when we analysed the nest, we did find guines. What we don't know is whether any had been released, and we don't, if they hadn't, we don't know when they would have been released. So 1st of October is kind of a sort of warning sign. So when we come to spring trapping this year, we'll look at those nests and we'll try and have a bit more of a density of traps around those areas. I also talked to the volunteer trackers about, if they think they might have missed some nests. And last year, we've got a list of about 26 areas where we may well have missed things. It was a busy year, really was. Just rattled through some nice pretty pictures of Jersey, gives you a sort of sense of how things have developed over the years. So that's back in 2017. Oh my God, I wish I could turn the clock back and to that one. It just seems extraordinary. I mean, it was busy then, but we're now more efficient at doing things. 2018, SN, secondary nest, PN, primary nest, TN's in there, that's 2019. TN, tertiary nests, basically means that you mucked up the nest removal. I think we're much better at this than we were, but it is possible to muck up a nest removal. So effectively, the hornets regather and start to build another nest, usually very close to where the secondary nest was. But we didn't have any tertiary nests last year at all. 2020 dropped back a little bit. COVID, not sure about that one. And then the numbers start to accelerate. 2021. Some of the pins in this map have a different color. Those were nests we left in trees, which wasn't the ideal. So the nests had been destroyed. Come on to destruction a little bit later. The nests had been destroyed, and towards the end of the season, it just became a bit of a logistical nightmare to then remove them. So we left them in trees. Last year in 2023, there's the map for 2023, almost all the nests in trees we destroyed with a long extendable lance, and they were left up there. And you do get some reports of nests in trees, but it's an opportunity for me to engage with members of the public, thank them for reporting, being observant. The nests are seen in the trees once the leaves fall from the trees. Until then, they are pretty invisible, actually. And that's one of the problems with finding a lot of those nests. Nigel talked about nest location. I'm not going to dwell on that, but they can pretty much be anywhere. So most of the, many of the primary nests are in buildings. So this is porches, carports, lean-tos, store sheds, the eaves of garages, those sorts of things. We certainly get a reasonable number of nests in kind of eaves and roof spaces. Hornets finding a gap underneath some lead flashing, under some tiles, up underneath the soffit boards. If the eaves have these plastic vents in them, we almost every year there's a couple of nests where the hornets have found that gap in a crack or a break in one of those plastic vents for the eaves, and they start building a nest in there. It's kind of classic, those ones. The miscellaneous, anything from a chimenea. Last year we had a piece of child's toy equipment in the garden. Quite a few in bird boxes last year. I think it was 7 of them, which has led somebody to propose actually putting up boxes in areas where we've had high densities of nests, and just seeing if we can actually attract hornets to produce a nest in a bird box type location, and then obviously easily removed from there. We had 19 nests in hedges and shrubs, and that left, I'll come on to this, to a massive increase in sting incidents on gardeners. So people just going about their work at home, tidying up, cutting the hedge, leaf blowing, those sorts of things, and they disturbed a nest in hedges. So obviously a high risk area for nests. The brambles I've mentioned before, low down. I think they start in brambles as primary nests, and they stay there and continue to develop into those much larger nests later on in the year. When dealing with them, when you start to cut an approach to a bramble nest, the hornets know you're there very quickly indeed, because one bramble tendril often links into another one. We get a few nests in walls and those sorts of things. We've had them on cliffs, always logistically difficult to do. And then all the nests in trees are those secondary nests, anything from about 10 meters high up to 30 meters high, something like that. And often very difficult to spot and logistically difficult to treat as well. Expect the unexpected when it comes to locations of nests. So just a few little things there. As I said, amazing work by our Jersey Asian Hornet group of trackers. They are incredibly experienced now. Being volunteers, they tend to work in quite different ways depending on their personalities and who they are and things like that. Some people like to work as a very tight team. Others work as a much larger team. We have sort of situations where some people are doing the groundwork of setting up the base station, observing the direction of flight and getting some times. And then they report that to somebody else who does the mapping and has a sort of satellite overview of the area and is able to offer good advice on where to go next in the tracking case. So it becomes a collaborative exercise often. And it's really lovely to see the way people work. Some people are better at spotting the nests in trees. Other people are very good at the sort of the initial stages of tracking. So I like to think that everybody can bring somebody from something to the game. Said members of the public reported 129 of the nests last year. Found is a rather odd category. It usually starts with somebody saying, I've got lots of large dark insects flying around outside my kitchen window, and I'll send somebody along and then they'll spot the hornets going into the roof space or something like that. So I call that a found nest. It wasn't tracked and it wasn't particularly reported, but there you go. Getting public awareness of what nests look like, or at least making sure that they report it so you have an opportunity to get it checked out properly, I think is really important. We're using Trapit as our bait of choice. It is expensive. I think you all know that. We got through quite a few litres last year. We had a few very kind donations as well. of it. Some of the volunteers are using their own recipes. I think the general consensus is that the homemade recipes are not quite as good, but they're not far off. Particularly a fermented sugar syrup recipe with a bit of bramble jelly. Mention that later on. Yeah, I tend to record heights of nests with multiple hornets, so not embryo nests with just the queen. Interested in whether this is changing, and perhaps without some predatory pressure on the hornet nests, where they'll actually come down in height from their trees. And of course, if they come down in height, then they will present a greater risk to being disturbed by members of the public. I'm just going to rattle through this one. Nigel mentioned nest destruction. And we use a variety of methods. The ones in trees are used by the same product used in the UK. In fact, we helped test it, Vulcan P5. I'm not sure whether Nigel knows it, but we did actually have 4 nests last year that weren't destroyed. They were awkward to get to, but I think it's, as I said, we're not removing the nests from trees. So for this year, we'll set up a system of somebody checking those nests a week later and then 2 weeks later to ensure that nest destruction. It was embarrassing, I would say, and really disappointing when we had some guys tracking a nest, and it suddenly dawned on them that they seemed to be tracking towards one that had been found and they thought destroyed about 4 or 5 weeks before. So that was a waste of resource. I recognize that, and we can't have that happen again. But yeah, so we're using this extendable lance. We're still using FICAMD in roofs and walls, still allowed to use it, though I think it has been withdrawn. We'll have to think about that one. We do try and remove them where we possibly can, as similar to you guys in the UK, not easy or very difficult to remove from roofs and inside walls. We play around with a few other areas. Actually, not play around. We do use a few other methods. We've got our Asian Hornet Hoover, and then you use a freeze spray or carbon dioxide to anesthetize the hornets in the Hoover, and then they can be transferred to a Tupperware and killed safely in a freezer. Freeze spray works really well on nests up to about the size of a football, and occasionally we use an aerosol pyrethroid-based pesticide spray as well. We tended to use that towards the end of last season when the nests were really aggressive. I found the ones in brambles, they were really aggressive, and it was quite intimidating dealing with them. We tend to put up kill traps before and after removal of the nest. After you've removed a nest from brambles, you try and put the kill trap up literally exactly where the nest was, and that normally mops up up to a couple of hundred hornets from the environment, and the trap is changed after a few days. And if you're still getting hornets in the trap after about a week, there's probably another nest in the area. Over water, we do use diatomaceous earth, and we're still experimenting with that one. You usually have to retreat, so it's not ideal, but it means that you don't have to use a biocide to kill the nests over water. Yeah, lots. It's a real mixture. We don't have a wide choice of too many pest controllers in Jersey. They are the ones who want to be involved are fully involved in controlling Asian hornets in Jersey. But with that number of nests, we need to rely on volunteers to help us out, and those volunteers who are doing it, they're now incredibly well experienced at treating nests, but so all of the lower down one accessible nests. But we've also gone through bespoke training of the volunteers on the safe use of pesticides, and they are now using the extendable lance and doing a fantastic job of it, and using Vulcan P5 to kill nests in trees. The 132 of the nests came with a cost, so that's pest controllers, Occasionally have had to use tree climbers and hoists, but the extendable lance is a remarkable piece of equipment, and if used properly, you can get the vast majority of them. So the average cost of removing nests last year was just under £230. Some of them are very easy indeed, small primary nest, and some of the more complicated nests in trees, especially if they needed 2 doses of the pesticide, cost quite a lot more than £230. Really important to get your PPE right. There is kit available for various suppliers in France. I find the idea of those sort of hot rubberized suits just not acceptable. So we're using BBWare, and we've worked with them to develop a sort of an ultra vest that we wear underneath. So there's a double layer of clothing across your whole torso. Good pair of gloves, absolute must, and eye protection and a extra head protection within the suit, either a hard hat or a woolly hat or something like that. Eye protection, an absolute must. It's really unpleasant if you get squirted in the eye with, it's a little unclear whether it's fecal matter or whether it's venom, but not nice at all. One thing I wanted to talk about is stings. Again, I'll rattle through this a little bit. There is the mantra that a sting from a hornet is no worse than a wasp or a bee sting. It is. It really hurts. It's not very nice at all. I am uncertain from the figures whether there is an increased risk of an anaphylaxis from a hornet sting as opposed to a wasp or a bee sting. But anaphylaxis presents a quite frightening risk to anybody working with hornets. I mentioned before we had more people stung last year than any before, and gardeners were one of the main groups. So 8 members of the public who were gardening were stung last year. Something very much to bear in mind and get the message out to gardening groups, of course. We had 2 instances of anaphylaxis on volunteers. One was a person who was checking a kill trap and was just foolish, I would say. And hornets had gathered in the top of the trap, and he got too close without checking it and was stung. And the other one was a little bit more frightening, but just goes to show what can happen. Somebody who got stung, it hurt, they got in their car to drive home, and they passed out behind the wheel. It doesn't bear thinking about. And they went through a low wall. The car dropped into a meadow. The car landed on its side. They got out the car eventually, called their own ambulance. But of course, it could have ended up so much worse. So we put in place some protocols for people who get stung in terms of reporting it straight away, recording it and getting to a safe place really quickly, and monitoring symptoms for an hour before anyone even thinks about driving, so that risk of passing out after being stung just can't impact any activities such as driving that you may do. It really hurts. It's not nice at all. So we changed our advice. Don't take risks at all, and getting that PPE absolutely right. It's sometimes people are working a bit of a rush, and it's easy to take shortcuts. There's no room to be blasé about getting stung anymore. So hornets and beekeepers, just a few things. We definitely had an increase in hawking last year, and we had some losses. It's really difficult for me to put my finger on how much, because our engagement with beekeepers in Jersey, I'm a beekeeper, but our engagement with beekeepers in Jersey is quite loose, because I suppose we separated the Jersey Asian Hornet group out from beekeeping in 2018, and that's provided some advantages and some disadvantages. I'm most definitely trying to engage with beekeepers much more last year and this year, and I hope we'll bring more beekeepers on board to the actual control program, rather than them just trapping or using what I call mitigation devices within their own apiary, which of course can protect apiaries, but doesn't control Asian hornets particularly. I mentioned there that I think there has been a sense for me of beekeepers being in denial about what is coming their way, and they need to sort of step up a little bit on that side of things. We've got a few people with electric harps and certainly trapping and muzzles, but not many, I would say, in Jersey. Public awareness. We are really lucky in Jersey. I accept that. I was really pleased, and congratulations, Kirsteen, on the work that you're doing. I think that's so important. I don't envy you at all. We're lucky in Jersey with the local media. I know most of the journalists personally, and we've got short lines of communications. And through our Facebook group, we have a great social media presence, and if you're not already following it, please do so. You'll learn a lot. I think you guys are doing a great job over there. There's more to do. Really important to share consistent messages, and for each association, or not to be in a position of having to sort of recreate the wheel. I thought the advert on buses was fabulous, so well done whoever's idea that one was, and for achieving that one. Some ideas there on wider groups, but I think you know what that one. We're lucky in Jersey with our amazing group of volunteers. Our volunteers are licensed under our wildlife law to catch and release an invasive species. You have different systems over there, and I strongly encourage you to work to those systems and not catch and release invasive species unless you are appropriately licensed. Our volunteers are insured because they're working on an approved government program. We're also DBS checking them as well. They all get a lanyard that gives them authority and encourages members of the public to allow them access to private land, and I think that means that they should be DBS checked. I offer training, basically the theory of tracking, health and safety before they go out in the field and build up those field skills. But teamwork, really important, and me as a government representative working really closely with the volunteers is one of our amazing strengths. I mentioned baits, mainly trap it, fermented sugar syrup, fermented cappings. France, they seem to use apple juice quite a lot. We tend not to use protein very much. Trapping, really important. Lots of discussion on this on social media. We'll be trapping around areas where we've missed nests, late nests. We map all these trap locations. That's perhaps something for you guys to think about at a local level. We're carrying it out from late March until late-ish June. We ran on into July last year. There was some discussion on social media about where to place traps, and I would say not in apiaries. You don't want to be attracting queens into your apiaries or hornets into your apiaries if you can help it. We've got the system of Jersey Asian Hornet Group volunteers as area coordinators, and then members of the public carrying out trapping. And this system means that I'm not so closely involved with huge numbers of members of the public on the trapping, though I am myself an area coordinator with my own members of the public to supply a trap to, give them training, and be the point of contact for any questions. And indeed, if they think they've caught something big and buzzy in there. Modifications traps, really important. Nigel mentions selective trapping. We're using these Vita Pharma traps. They're adapted with 7mm bycatch holes. We're using either mini wicks, sponges, or mesh, so insects cannot drown in them. And really important to check them daily and release that bycatch. I know some people have said, well, a big nest will take out 11.3 kilos of insects, so it's worth a bit of bycatch. That doesn't wash with me at all. I think people should do everything they possibly can to minimize bycatch. And with these cheaper Vita Pharma traps, then it really is daily monitoring. There's a lot of work going on with selective traps. And as Nigel was saying, I would encourage everyone to test traps for their effectiveness and their selectiveness. And I'd like to find a way of kind of collating all that information, trapping carried out to a standard protocol, perhaps, collate all that information and make that generally available and build up a massive body of information about which are the best traps to use. And of course, it's not just effectiveness and selectiveness. There's price point and capacity and ease of use and those sorts of things. We tend not to use monitoring traps very much. We tend to use wick pots, but occasionally if we get a vague report, might just get somebody to put a trap up for a couple of days to confirm the presence of Asian hornets. Kill traps, most definitely. Autumn trapping, there was lots of discussion about that last year. Our experience in Jersey is autumn trapping does not work to catch catch autumn queens. But I think some more work must be done on that. Tracking, standard methods of tracking, usually straightforward catch, mark and release. But last year we developed a nice method of streamering hornets. We had some visitors from the UK who learned that, and it's a great way of being able to see your hornet fly a lot further. Radio tracking, I think, is an important piece, sort of tool to have in the armory, but there are sort of costs associated with both the kit and the radio tags and risks to losing the radio tags. We're using Google My Maps as a shareable standard, a shareable system to map our tracking cases and try and work to a sort of standard protocol and symbology so people can interpret the maps. Some key lessons here, finally. Teamwork. Encourage you all to work together. You are far stronger together. And I know, over the years, there's been, some tensions, I think it's fair to say, between perhaps MBU and AHATs and things like that. But it looks as though it's coming together really nicely. There's no room for empire building in this world. You've all got valid opinions, something to bring to the party, so to speak. So I think working together, being open, discussing ideas is the way forwards. Building your public awareness, really important. Mention nests again in there. I noticed the app has 13 photographs associated with it, and only one of those photographs, the very last one, is of a primary nest. So I think maybe someone should look at that one and post a little bit more information, that map, about what to look for or how to identify a nest. Trapping, really important. I've used this expression, insect Armageddon, and avoiding that. If traps that are not selective or traps that are not being monitored and bycatch released are being put up there, particularly those bottle traps, which are not ideal at all, then you'll be killing a lot of really important native pollinating species. Don't start too early. And, mapping your traps, ensuring you've got good coverage. But it looks like things are underway on that one. After late June, if vague reports of hornets or just to sort of cover off monitor an area, then either monitoring traps or wick pots. Put a wick pot up in a place where you clock it every day when you leave the house. And if there's a nest in the area, you will soon know about it. Nice thing about wick pots is there's no bycatch at all. Nest locations, expect anywhere. And a few things about tracking there. We're not doing a lot of my volunteers don't time very much. They just clock the direction and move in that direction. And they're not doing actual timing, but you kind of get a sense from when the hornet comes back that you're getting close. And the main technique we're using is what we call tracking down the line. And you move your hornet down your flight line. Works really well. We continue to get a request to come over to Jersey. Got plenty of availability of slots this year. It's booking up a little bit, but very happy to have the assistance of people from the UK over in Jersey. Two-way street, you help us and we will provide you with experience and the skills to help the MBU track nests if that is what is required. So a few thoughts in there from Jersey. So thank you very much indeed for listening. My email's addressed there if anyone wants to contact me, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions as well to either me or indeed everyone else who has spoken. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Alistair. That's really interesting. That there are a couple of questions early on that you've actually answered in that. We will be sending you a compilation of the questions aimed at you as we'll do with MBU. So thanks very much. If you stop sharing, and then our last speaker today is Jackie, who's a beekeeper in Kent, who's going to tell us about last year and what happened there.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Okay. Oops, I'm just having difficulty. Let me just bring down that. Okay. Okay, can you see that, Diane?
I can indeed, thank you.
And you can hear me, right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for allowing me to give this presentation on behalf of Dover and District BKA. I am the training officer and also the Asian Hornet coordinator for Dover. In my talk today, I'll just be covering, just very briefly, who we are, Dover and Districts, what our response was last year, what our planned response for the coming year is, and our key learning points. So we are down obviously in the southeast of the UK. We take our membership from an area from Sandwich through to Dover, Folkestone, and round through to Hythe. We are an independent beekeeping association, and to the north of us we have Thanet, who are also an independent beekeeping association. We've got Canterbury and Ashford, who are branches of Kent Beekeeping Association. And I would reiterate the point that speakers have been making about the need to talk with associated branches. It's probably the best thing that's come out of this Asian Hornet problem is we are talking with branches which we've never really held conversations with for many years. We have 110 members. Our membership covers about 300 kilometres square. We operate on a very small budget, and I put that in merely to say that has influenced how we have approached the problem. And as Nigel said, we're 20 miles from France, which usually is a bonus, but I'm afraid in this circumstances is a real curse. And I would reiterate that beekeeping in Dover is never going to be the same again. We will always have to do something in line to see what the situation with Asian Hornet is, in order that we can safeguard the rest of the UK. So last year, things seemed to be going on as normal. We got wind of one or two sightings in the Kent beekeeping area, but in April we had a sighting by a member of the public, which was identified by one of our members as an Asian Hornet, but we didn't think very much of that really. We often get the odd one turning up. Then we had that primary nest that Nigel showed the picture of under the barbecue, which was destroyed. And then things started to get really interesting because our apiary manager found an Asian hornet in some syrup. The National Bee Unit came in, and as a result of that, we had a primary and a secondary nest destroyed in that area. And from there on, everything took off. In total, we had 35 nests destroyed between July and October. So to show this graphically, taken from the BBKA social media website, 52 nests destroyed in the whole of Kent, of which 35 were in the Dover and District area, 72 for the whole of the UK. Does this mean that Dover had more nests than anywhere else? Well, yes, we did. But does this mean that there would not be an equal number of nests elsewhere? Who knows? Probably, unlikely, I guess. But we just do not know. Because if you don't look for these hornets, you will not find them. And Dover decided from the off that we had a duty of responsibility to the rest of the UK to work on an eradication program. We had not seen any hornets in our apiaries the previous year. We suspected it was the first year of incursion. The numbers were low, therefore, and so we decided we had to go all out and do our level best to clear these hornets out before they spread throughout the rest of Kent and the UK. The primary role of our members is monitoring. So I guess under the new system, you'd refer to them as verifiers. We worked in partnership with the National Bee Inspectors, and I have to say that partnership has grown and become stronger over time. We find the hornets, then we obviously upload the fact we found them, and the National Bee Inspectors then come in and do the track, trace and nest destruction. As Alistair said, on Jersey, the average cost is coming in at £227 to destroy a nest. Even if you know where the nest is and you bring in a local authority pest controller to destroy it, they're charging you £45. That doesn't include finding the nest and certainly wouldn't include bringing in tree climbers or other additional things that are needed to remove the nest. So I see it as so important to work in partnership with the National Bee Unit to ensure that we keep this track, trace and nest destruction free of charge. And they are extremely skillful in finding the nests. As I've already said, it's really important to keep talking with your neighbouring beekeeping associations, not only just to agree the boundaries where you're going to do your monitoring up to, but also hopefully to share resources. Because hornets do not recognise boundaries. Now, if anyone is out there hoping that we're going to be using high-tech mapping devices and high-tech equipment, I'm afraid you're going to be very disappointed. It's a little bit Dad's Army-ish down here, but we feel we are working towards getting a simple, sustainable plan in place, one that can be rolled out for however long is needed, year on year. It doesn't rely on personalities. So although I'm the Asian Hornet coordinator at the moment, anyone else could easily take this up. I personally do not wish to give the rest of my life to Asian Hornet tracking. I want to get on with my beekeeping. And so I want a system which is going to be easy to roll out. Just like members deal with Varroa on an annual basis, I want them to be able to deal with the Asian Hornet when and if the need arises. So the most useful tool that we had was actually our personal premium subscription to the Ordnance Survey mapping tool, which we used to have for printing off maps when we went walking. And that really is the basis of how we did our mapping. So last year we decided we had to decide which area we were going to take responsibility for, and we opted that most of our membership came within this boundary, 300 kilometres squared, and we've discussed with neighbouring BKAs that would be our where we would monitor to, and then it's over to you once you get over that blue line. Last year, we were taken rather by surprise. We certainly weren't expecting the level of incursion that we had. And we had a basic knowledge of the Asian hornet and its life cycle. So we had to do a lot of reading. And I would recommend Sarah Bunker's book, The Asian Hornet Handbook, as a real sort of authority on the Asian hornet. I'd also like to thank Sarah for all of the time she gave to answering our questions that we had when we were planning our response last year. Invaluable. Professor Stephen Martin's book is a more general book. It's still a good read, but Sarah's is far more detailed. I also need to give thanks to the Guernsey AHAC coordinators over there, and they are Damien Harris and Francis Russell. I think Francis is speaking at the Spring Convention this year. This is a really good read and details exactly what they do to keep their Asian hornet levels down, and they work on a target level of no more than 10 nests per year. I think they exceeded that the last year, but then I think it was an exceptional year for everyone. And of course, we trawled the academic papers to look for other examples of where hornets had been found and how they tackled incursions at the early stages to eradicate. There are very few papers out there. There was one which unfortunately is not open source, but it is one of a study done on the island of Mallorca, where over a period of 5 years, in more difficult terrain than we have in Dover, they managed to eradicate the hornet. The paper only goes up to 2022. So unfortunately, although I've tried to find out what's happened subsequently, I've not been able to get any data on that. One of the key things that we learned was that worker hornets, so we're talking, after the queen has established her primary nest, going into the secondary nest, they forage around 700 meters to 1 kilometer. So going for eradication, we did opt to put monitoring traps in at 1 kilometre apart. So the idea behind this was that if you have 2 traps which are separated by 1 kilometre, if there is a nest between those 2 points, that nest should be no more than 500 metres from any one nest. We didn't have a trap, and we are working on an incredibly tight budget. So based on Tony Warren's original idea of using a slush poppy cup, we adopted that, and my husband then worked to adapt it to make it a good monitoring tool. So we have a Corex roof to keep the rain out. The wire hanger helps to stiffen this. We have a roof with the entrance, and the entrance has a piece of electrical conduit stuck beneath it. That helps to keep the hornet in. I'll show you a video right at the end, which shows that sometimes, and I suspect this was a queen, but we have no way of telling that, I suspect that they do get very inquisitive and could find their way out. Based on Andrew Durham's talk, we have put in slots to release bycatch at 6mm, and we also use a sponge, so we only trap it so it gets soaked up by the sponge. We do not have free trap it in which kill can, sort of bycatch can drown. We try to monitor the traps on at least a 2 daily basis, but I am afraid here I am a little bit in disagreement with Alistair Christie from Jersey. I feel that at this moment in time, we have a window of opportunity to clear out the Asian hornet in this area. And so I feel a small amount of bycatch is legitimate under these circumstances. This year, I am specifically in the 20 traps that I have out, I am recording all the bycatch that I collect. I would like to get some more data on this. I do not believe in all of the many hundreds of traps we were monitoring over the time we were trapping last year. We did not collect 11 kilograms worth. So far, I've had very few insects in my traps, but I'll have more data on that at the end of this season. We've also added a waterproof label to be in compliance with BBKA's risk assessment protocol, and our traps are coming in at about 40 pence. Anyone is welcome to details of how we make the traps. Please just get in touch. So then we had the logistics of getting the traps out there. And this is last year, remember, and we are at the beginning of August, end of July, August time. We made 150 traps, and the traps were given out at the end of July when we had our meeting, along with a small volume of trap it. It was so expensive, we did have to limit our members. Clearly, 150 traps is insufficient to cover 300 kilometre squares. So we ran workshops on how to make other traps and how to set these up effectively. I'm not going to go into any great detail on this, but just to say that on the BBKA website, I'm sure you know, there are very good instructions of how to build the bottle traps. I would say a sponge at the bottom there to turn it from a less lethal trap is desirable, and a wick trap. Okay, so our members had traps or were making traps, and then there was the question of getting them out there at 1 kilometre intervals so that we could collect the worker hornets, which then would allow us to alert the National Bee Unit inspectors to come in, track, trace, and destroy the nests for us. So the members who had the traps got in touch and told us where they'd put their traps out. And out came our ordnance survey map, all taped together. It's no, sort of work of beauty, but it did the trick. And dots went on the map, and we obviously weren't covering our 300 kilometre squares. So I got out the membership list and I telephoned every other member who had not got in touch. And fortunately, a lot of them were very keen to get in touch, and this also included members who were not keeping bees. And this is very interesting because they thought that because they weren't keeping bees, they really couldn't help. They thought that the Asian hornet only predated upon honeybees. No honeybees, no need to trap. So they got traps out and we got many more dots on the map, but they still were not at 1 kilometre intervals. So then we had the problem of filling in the gaps, because we were determined that if we were going for eradication, we had to at least sample every part of our 300 kilometre squares. And out came our next high-tech bit of equipment, a sellotape ring, which happened to have a radius of 1 kilometre. And so we put it on our map with the trap at the centre, and we basically looked at where we needed to get more traps out. And on a second map, we marked these. And then we brought in our secret weapon. This is Greg, who is one of about 6 people who I will be eternally grateful to, who went out last year and went through those gaps in our monitoring area and put out traps. They worked tirelessly. I cannot tell you how much effort. Greg alone must have done 50 traps. So he was traveling right the way throughout our area. He was leaving traps for sometimes for longer, but for 5 to 7 days, going back where he could to empty any bycatch, and then he would move the trap on. And in that way, we managed to cover more or less the whole of our area. So why do we need to improve on this? Well, it was convenient for our members, and because of that, we got more members participating, because they basically put the traps out where they felt they could do that. It was convenient to them. But the disadvantages outweighed it. The coverage was not complete. The surveillance grid of 1 kilometre had lots of gaps, and these gaps, unfortunately, were not grouped together, which meant it was really hard work to sample those areas. It relied on a few people picking up that extra work. And by the end of October going into November, these people, including myself, were exhausted. It also relied heavily on extremely good communication. If a member put traps out and didn't tell us they'd put traps out, then we could have people doing extra work, which really was unnecessary. I'm not saying it was a waste of time. The more traps out there at this stage in August was essential, but it would have lessened the work on those 6 people. So we decided this was simply not simple. It was not simple enough. It was not sustainable, because we feel in Kent, with France on our doorstep, that now in Calais has a very high population of hornets, we feel that we will have to do some sort of monitoring exercise year on year. Not necessarily, well, I will hope not as detailed as we are doing at present, but we certainly need to safeguard the rest of the UK. It's beholden to us. So the position at the end of November was 52 nests cleared in Kent, 35 in our area, but remember, we were looking for them. Oops, I hope it hasn't locked. Right, they were mainly centred around the coast, which might explain that they had come across from the continent, from France. We had unusually high winds coming up from that direction in May. We don't normally have winds coming up from the south. They normally are southwesterlies or northerlies, but in May we had particularly strong winds, and that might have helped the hornets across the channel. We were told by the National Bee Unit inspectors that 10 of those 35 nests would probably have gone undiscovered if we had not done this grid type trapping, this grid monitoring right across our area. These would have been nests which were in very rural locations and would not have been discovered by members of the public or by beekeepers. On a note of optimism, and I think you have to be optimistic in this business, no Dover member lost a colony to hornets last year. We had hornets in our apiaries, hawking our bees in some cases. I indeed had hornets in my apiary. They were not interested in my bees actually, but they were in the apiary. They were more interested in the monitoring trap I had put up there to help the National Bee Unit. But no member lost a colony to hornets, and we had 35 nests in our area, which I think actually means that you can still beekeep as normal as long as you're on the ball and as long as nest densities are kept low. And the other note of encouragement was when the National Bee Unit did their own gridding exercise right at the end of October going into November. And I don't have all the details on this, but I understand that they moved from the East Coast round Deal, Dover, right the way through Kent and into Surrey. In our area, they found no Asian hornets. Now, nests would have been still active at that time, so probably you'd expect them to pick up workers, or they could have picked up queens, though telling the difference, I understand, is incredibly difficult without close analysis. But the encouraging thing was no hornets were found in our area. I believe one nest was found near Rye as a result of that grid trapping exercise. So what about the coming year? Well, Dover has decided to go for a 3-phase plan. We still feel that we need to, we're aiming for eradication. We still feel we need to do more than probably anywhere else in the UK. So we are in the process of getting our queen spring traps out. Again, we're unsure when the queens are going to come out of hibernation. Reading, it would appear that they start to come out when temperatures reach 12 degrees and above for a number of consecutive days, 3 days, question mark, we don't know. So we have got our traps out there already in a 1 kilometre trapping grid with members checking and emptying as often as they can. We will have them there till the end of May, unless we have traps which have particular bycatch issues, and then we will take down those traps. That is the recommendation of Guernsey. We think this is really good advice. So at the moment, most of our area has monitoring traps out at 1 kilometre intervals. We have a few areas that don't have them. We are busy trying to fill those areas in, but we will have a second look for worker hornets in probably August, when we will put the traps back out again. So members will take them in towards the end of May. They will keep their traps and then they will put them back out again at a specific time, probably August, and we will then look for worker hornets in order to do nest, track, trace and destruct if necessary with the National Bee Unit. Hopefully we won't find any. And then they will take down those traps and store them for next year. And they will just go to extra vigilance in the apiary, checking hives. And in Kent, we have a real problem come September of wasps robbing in our apiaries. They destroy more nests at the moment than the Asian hornet did last year. And we will probably keep this going through till the end of November. So I just want to show you this. This was a wasp trap which was set up by one of our members in September. It was the wasps that were killing his bees. And you can see the hornets came in. They were after the wasps, I'm sure. This had 9 Asian hornets in it, and was the most I know of any member trapping in any trap at all, 9 hornets. The hornets did not hawk his bees from first to last. They were more interested in those wasps. So we think that if you set wasp traps up, which many of our members do as a matter of course to protect their bees, then you are likely, if you change the bait and search through for dead Asian hornet bodies, you are likely to see whether there is anything out there. The role of the National Bee Unit, I put a question mark, but I was really encouraged by what Nigel Semmence said, and the fact that they are doing extra spring queen trapping down on the coast is fantastic news. And the relationship that Dover has with Tom Bickerdike and his team, I think is fantastic and can only get stronger because we are mutually supportive. One is not better than the other. We are just skilled in different areas and can bring different strengths to getting rid of and keeping the Asian hornet out of this country. So how are we going to get our traps out in a more efficient way this year? Well, we go back to our Dad's Army approach, but we have printed off 2 copies of the Dover area, our 300 kilometre square area. We are using a scale of 1 to 25,000. So each of these squares is 1 kilometre square. It gives enough detail, the resolution is detailed enough for members to actually see where their traps need to go. So we have 2 copies of these. 1 copy is my master copy. 1 copy we chop up for our members. So here is a kilometre square. And what we did is on both of the maps, we actually divided it up into 4 kilometre square areas, and we numbered the areas. So each of the 2 maps was identical in the way that we had divided it up, and each member chose at least 1 4 kilometre square block. Some members, bless them, went for more than that, and that was really helpful. So we, as I say, we numbered them sequentially across our area. We had 75 of these blocks in our area. So this is what the beekeeper got. They got a chopped up bit of map, and this is their 4 kilometre square area, which we subdivided, and we put a black dot in the centre of each. And all we asked beekeepers to do was to put a trap out as near to that black dot as we possibly could. Thanks to the Guernsey Asian Hornet team, they allowed us to base our Asian Hornet trapping instructions. We produced a little leaflet for members. We based it on their leaflet that they gave out to their members. So this is part of the master copy that I keep. And you can see this would be what one member would have. And we were asking them to put a trap out in each of those sections, each 1 kilometre squared section. So it builds on the neighbouring beekeepers will do the same. And so the distance between two traps would be around 1 kilometre. Obviously, one member pointed out that I think I'd asked them to put a trap out in the middle of a road. Well, obviously, you know, it was as near as possible to that black mark. And in order that I had a record of who was trapping where, as they chose the area on the master map of where they were going to trap, we asked them to record their name and contact details and to circle the their chosen bit of map in red. So this is what the final map looks like, and it's behind me at the moment. We still have some areas to cover here, which we are covering, and there are 1 or 2 here, which I am sure at our meeting in February, we will have takers for that. We will make sure that it is all covered. Here marks our boundary. We do have members who belong to our BKA, but actually live in other association areas. We call these outlier members, and we are liaising with Ashford and Canterbury and Thanet, and we are making sure that they know exactly which of our members will be trapping in there. We put them in contact with them if they need to be, and they discuss where the traps are. And likewise, they are doing the same for me, and that is excellent, really good. So this was our meeting at the end of January. Here is our master map. People are consulting it to decide which area is most convenient for them to cover. They are then signing up on the register, and they receive their little bit of map then with the corresponding number and one of these leaflets, which gives them detailed instructions of how to set the traps out. Because there is no doubt that how you set the trap up is as important as where it goes. So each member left the area, left our meeting, sorry, with their chosen area. They'd circled it on our map. They'd registered ownership, so I know who is trapping where. I can get in touch with them if I need further details on that. They took for their little section of cut up maps so that they could mark on precisely where they were putting their traps. And I do know that members have put more out, so we have a minimum of 300 traps out there. They were given 4 traps, which we have made, and they got 400 millilitres of trap-it bait, and I say a leaflet. We had over 70 attendees at this meeting, and we were grateful to Tom Bickerdike, who came and gave us a talk on what the National Bee Unit were doing. 66 of the 75 blocks were chosen, but as I say, some members don't trap in our area, so we know we are covering over 300 kilometres squared. It's just that not all of that, unfortunately, is in our area, but it is supporting other BKAs. And now we're in the process of covering the remaining blocks. The advantages from a sort of a coordinator's point of view is this is a really easy method of rolling out grid monitoring. The traps are definitely more regularly spaced. There is certainly less work putting traps out in the gaps, and it doesn't rely so heavily on those volunteers who generously gave of their time. And remember, this time also equates to money for petrol, travelling around the county, putting out traps. Because the gaps are in blocks, it's far easier for us to pick up those unassigned areas. And I'm hoping that in 25, we may only have to do a quick survey of our area. This will be really easy to roll out. The disadvantages are obviously members had less choice about where their traps could go. They have to really stick to this kilometre grid trapping to give us that coverage. There is still more, so there is a little bit more work for members to do, but it is shared more fairly, and it still relies on some people doing that extra little bit. But nevertheless, I still think this is the way forward that Dover will be going in the future. But I stress to say, I do not expect that we will have to do it so intensely in a 3-phase programme. I think it is simple. It's the materials we use are certainly simple. If anything was to happen to me, someone else could pick up and run with this very, very easily, and it is sustainable. People have mentioned about social media. It has been a really important second strand to our campaign, and we post on 40 community group sites. We've been doing this since last August. We post roughly every 4 weeks. We always post the same article. We think that's important because it gets the East Kent talking about the same thing and generates, I think they call it a hot topic, but certainly last year it really got the rest of the media involved. And now we are also passing our posts to different association areas. They are posting them under their banner and adapting them slightly for their needs. That's great. We respond to every question that comes in from these posts, and we get hundreds of likes and requests to repost. It's been really probably a backbone of our education of the public. You can't go far in East Kent without seeing one of these non-native species secretariat posters, and we are grateful that they've provided these in number free of charge. That's been excellent, and I shall certainly order some of the ones on nest identification, because that was one of our next little campaigns on our social media. Early on, we did try contacting all the organisations, other organisations in Kent, including, I hasten to say, the Kent Resilience Forum, which I am very glad has now decided that the Asian hornet is an emerging threat. What we found was there was little knowledge about the Asian hornet and the problems it would present, even in other wildlife groups. I was quite shocked by that. I think maybe that's because we as beekeepers have kept this as a secret amongst ourselves, and people have got the message that actually Asian hornets only selectively predate honeybees. It was viewed certainly as a beekeeper's problem, with the National Bee Unit out there to solve it. We got no offers of financial help or person power. which was disappointing because we were willing to provide the traps. But my thanks have to go to the National Trust, to the White Cliff Countryside Partnership, and to the Council Parks Department, who really were stalwarts and were behind us and allowed us access to land which we otherwise would not have got to. But if there is one action point I would point everyone in the country to, it's to start building those links now. And Kirsteen is doing a sterling job, as she's outlined it, but she's supporting us a lot on this. So thank you very much there, Kirsteen. Excuse me. So what have we learned? Well, at times, Munch's picture describes aptly how I felt. They were coming at us, the reports right, left and centre. And you've just really got to keep optimistic and have faith that the programme you have put in place is going to work. If you've thought about it and it's underpinned by good science, then hopefully we can eradicate at this early stage. But is this approach suitable for all organisations? The answer is no. It's already been mentioned earlier that you need to assess what risk your area has of becoming infested with Asian hornets. And I would say that the National Bee Unit here has an advisory role. They have the big picture, the detailed picture, and they will know what your level of risk is. At one meeting with BBKA Asian Hornet coordinators last year, someone suggested the system of maybe going red, amber and green. I don't know whether this will be adopted, but I feel it's a good way of viewing what your level of risk is. We here around the coast are certainly in the red. Systematic trapping. We need to get those hornets. We need to find those nests. We need to get rid of the queens. As I say, hopefully we can go to a less intensive programme of systematic trapping next year. Amber people might be ones that are on the periphery. They might have particular areas where Asian hornet could enter the country, so they've got areas of concern. So they may do a little bit more trapping, but you know, not as certainly as much or systematic as us. And finally, the green area, you lucky people, you really just at the moment need to be extra vigilant in your area and to start liaising with organisations that could be of support. But one thing's for certain, we really weren't ready for what we had last year. And although we fortunately have a very collegiate membership who pulled together and pulled all stops out, if you have a plan ready to go, so much the better. Just get talking to one another. So what else would I say? Just very quickly, I stress simple and sustainable. This is not just, for us at least, a one-off year. We've got to do something every year, but not as intensive. What you do has to be linked to the level of risk in your area. I fully endorse what Alistair Christie said about bycatch, but I feel that in Kent, we really do need to clear these hornets out. Okay, we measured 60 kilometres will take you from the Dover coast up to the Thames estuary. And I believe that they can fly queens in the spring. They can disperse as much as 100 kilometres. We will do you no favours if we do not clear them out. whatever you do must be based on the best science available, and this is emerging. And I'm sure, I know that Jersey said they didn't go until the end of March for their queen trapping. We would love to go later if we have to do it next year, but we're waiting to see when we catch our first queen, and that will give us a little bit more guidance. We just felt this year we had to get them out early, all the traps out early. Most important, I had some members that had put out, I don't know, 30, 40 traps and did not catch a hornet, and were really disheartened by the fact that they had not caught an Asian hornet. And I have to say, I stress upon members when I talk as their coordinator that actually every bit of information adds to the picture. The fact they're not collecting hornets, Asian hornets, is great. They're telling us there are not that many out there in that area. So actually they should be really pleased. Beekeepers need to pull together. You need to be clear on your monitoring boundaries, and you need to share your resources. And I cannot stress this enough, without the National Bee Unit behind us, working in partnership, doing the free track, trace and nest destruction, which they do extremely skillfully, and they work it very hard on the ground. I cannot sing their praises enough. The inspectorate on the ground were absolutely fantastic last year. Then, you know, we really need to keep that partnership going. Our role really should be monitoring. That doesn't mean to say we do not upskill our members in track and trace to help the National Bee Unit, but at the moment, our main role is monitoring. Keep optimistic. I keep saying to myself, there are only a finite number of nests to be found and destroyed each year. And once they're cleared out, that is it for that year. That keeps me going. As has already been said, you really have until mid-September to find and destroy all the nests in your area before the sexuals start coming out. You've got to give the National Bee Unit inspectors time to come in, find and destroy those nests. And no member, Dover member, I stress that, no Dover member lost any colonies to Asian hornets, even with 35 nests in their area. And finally, you need to engage in a comprehensive but targeted education campaign involving the public and key organisations. And I would suggest that's not too early to start for everyone in the country. And on that note, I hope you found, first of all, I hope there's something of interest that can help you with your planning at whatever level that is. And secondly, I hope I've gone some way to reassure you that we are doing the level best in Kent that we can to keep the Asian hornet out of the rest of the UK. We take our responsibility very seriously. And on that note, I'll finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you everyone for your patience. We did overrun earlier in the meeting, which is why we have a slightly later finishing time. Thank you to everyone who's spoken today. Thank you very much for all your questions. It's been really useful having some of the feedback. Some of you have emailed in and we're actioning things already. We are not static on this at all. So thank you all for coming. It's available on YouTube. And I'm just going to very quickly share you the BBKA website to show you what's on there in terms of where the resources are. But I will start by showing you the Save the Bees Fighting Fund, where we're raising money to help associations like Dover who are on the front line and who need some financial support. So if your association isn't currently affected by Asian hornets and you would like to contribute, then you can do so via this page, which is on Support Us, Support and Appeal, and it's the Save the Bees Fund. Our Asian Hornet pages have lots and lots of things. There's an Asian Hornet resource page, which is packed with different things. If any of you have got documents, leaflets, graphics you would like us to share with other associations, please email us and we will get them on the websites so that everyone benefits from the amazing work you're all doing. I can't thank you enough for those people who do share things. There's absolutely no point in us reinventing the wheel when there's people doing brilliant work out there, and we just need to share it slightly more on our website. So thank you all very much for coming today. I bid you happy weekend. Go and see if your bees are flying in and bringing in pollen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Brilliant
you.
presentation.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Great. Very good.
Very good.
I'll close down now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers and goodbye.
Cheerio. That sounded like Tony.